To replace the backrest air pump, the first thing we need to do is power off the chair, then unplug it. Next, we need to open the levers on the inline connector and remove the wiring from both sides. If you're working on the chair that's connected to a kiosk system, remove the kiosk cable harness from the cable guide, as well as the cable from the main PCB. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 3 screws that secure the rear shroud to the chair. Then we can slide the shroud backward and then tip it over, resting it on the floor next to the chair. Okay, next we'll use the Phillips head screwdriver again to remove the 3 screws that secure the PCB cover. And we can remove that cover. You'll need to pull it firmly at the rear as there are tabs installed over slots that have a rather secure connection. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 6 screws that secure the backrest cover. Then we can remove the cover. To get at the air pump cabling, we need to remove the 4 screws that secure the hip air valve bank to the chair. The cabling runs beneath the air valve. Okay, then we can tip that air valve bank up and out of the way and release the cabling from underneath. Next, we'll use a wire cutter to cut the 2 zip ties that secure the blue, white, and black cable bundle. And we can follow that air pump cable to the main PCB and disconnect the black connector. And pull the cable free. Okay, next we'll use a magnetized Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 4 screws that secure the pump to the tray. It's really important in this case to use a magnetized screwdriver, otherwise it's extremely likely that you'll lose the screws. Okay, then we can disconnect the hose from the front of the pump and remove the pump from the chair. To install the new pump then, we can place it into position. And then replace the 4 screws to secure it. Now it's really helpful if you can tuck your fingers underneath the pump and align the screw from below with your fingers. It's very difficult to see what you're doing. Okay, once those screws are nice and tight, we can route that air pump cable up between the 2 sets of posts on which the hip air valve bank rests, so coming up from the rear between both sets of posts. and then connect the connector to the main PCB. Okay, then making sure that cable is still in place between the two posts, we can place the hip air valve bank back into position, aligning the screw holes with the mounting posts. And then we can replace the 4 screws to secure it. Okay, next we can install 2 new zip ties to secure the blue, white, and black cable bundle. And cut the excess zip tie. And finally, we can connect the hose to the front of the air pump, making sure it's installed all the way onto that fitting. Okay, now we're ready to replace the backrest cover by installing the tabs at the bottom of the cover into the slots that are on the chair. And then lifting the cover up into position and replacing the screws to secure it. After installing the screws, use your fingers to check and make sure the tabs are still installed in the slots. Okay, now we're ready to replace the PCB cover. Note the tabs in the rear of the PCB area. You need to install the slots on the PCB tray over those tabs and push down firmly to secure it. Use your hands to make sure that the slots are installed successfully over those tabs. The screw holes will then be aligned, and you can replace the 3 screws to secure the cover. Okay, next we need to remove the 9 screws that secure the plastic panel to the underside of the shroud. Then we can twist the ends of that remotely controlled system cable and feed it through the hole we drilled in the rear of the shroud. Next, we're going to install a zip tie temporarily on the casing, just on the outside of the shroud, just to keep that wiring from falling back into the shroud while we're reinstalling the shroud on the chair. Okay, then we can replace that black plastic panel and the 9 screws to secure it. Okay, then we can flip that shroud back over carefully into position, putting as little strain on that cable as possible, and slide it into position. Now it's important that the edges of the shroud are installed between the black plastic side panels and the guides. In this case, it is not, so you can see he had to move the shroud over to the outside of the guide, so it's installed between the guide and the side panel. Okay, once the shroud's installed properly, we can replace the 3 screws to secure it. Then we can use a wire cutter to cut that temporary zip tie carefully off of the cable. Twist the ends of the wires. Then we'll install them into the inline connector. If the chair is connected to a T-Max system, it doesn't matter which slot each wire goes into. If it's connected to a kiosk system, then we need the positive wire on the right and the negative on the left, or the blue wire on the right and the green wire on the left. Once the wiring's inserted all the way, you can close the orange levers to secure it. Okay, if you're working on a system that has a kiosk harness, you can place the kiosk harness into the cable guide. And then we can install the wiring into the other side of the inline connector. Again, with the kiosk system, the positive wire needs to be on the right and the negative on the left. Okay, then we can plug in the chair, power it on, and we're done.